I build museum exhibits for a living, and here are the 5 weird tools I can't live without. Number 1, parallel jaw pliers. These look like any regular old pair of pliers, right? Wrong. These are the pliers your girl told you not to worry about. Because of the leverage of the camming action of the handles, you can apply an immense amount of force to whatever you want to squeeze into the depths of hell. Watch as I easily smash this sheet of Delrin plastic thin enough that I can cut fruit with it. As a practical example, you can strongly grip onto pipe fittings with flats without marring or damaging them. This crazy amount of force and the fact that the jaws always move parallel to each other means that you can use the pliers like a mini arbor press to press fit components together like this steel dowel into a Delrin hole for making jigs and fixtures. Try doing that with a regular pair of pliers. Number 2, the mobile microscope. This tiny little plastic doodad clamps over your phone camera and turns it into a surprisingly nice microscope with about 30 times zoom. And yes, I am going to call this a microscope since it enlarges objects that are too small to be seen with the naked eye, and those objects would be most appropriately measured in microns. But I digress. You can examine surface finishes of machine parts, identify fabrics, examine your terrible solder joints, and see how much carcinogenic dust you got on your fingers from sanding plastic without proper PPE. Number 3, the humble flush cutters. It's sold under the premise that you'll be cutting copper wires, but we know what you're really using it for, cutting off your nasty little hangnails. And it sure does work well for that, but it also works for a lot of other things too, like nibbling at plastic components or cutting off the little strangly spaghetti bits from your crappy 3D printed part, fresh, hot and ready off their uncalibrated 3D printer. Because this is a compression type cut, as opposed to shear like scissors, you can cut objects right down to where the cutter teeth were ground flat, giving you that beautifully perfect flush cut that will take those hangnails off right at the skin. Do you want more weird tool inspirations? Let me know, because I actually had 14 weird tools I wanted to talk about, but I thought that a top 5 sounded better in a title. Number 4, this rocket ship looking dude right here is typically sold for blowing dust off your camera lens, but it turns out to be super useful for blowing dust off of other delicate surfaces too, like awards, exhibit vitrines, and microscope optics. If you do a lot of delicate or high precision work, blowing dust or chips away without having to use a rag and risking scratching your work is huge. A canned air duster will do the same thing, but obviously isn't reusable, and it doesn't serve double duty as a ridiculous looking tool that could also be mistaken for a baby toy. Number 5, a butane soldering iron, but more like a butane multi-tool because it's not just a soldering iron. Don't get me wrong, I use it for electronic soldering all the time, but the ability to have a cordless mini hot air gun for heat shrink or a mini controlled flame for burning stuff is super useful. This is slightly bad, but if I need to identify a certain plastic, I'll burn a small quantity of it using this torch and then smell the fumes to figure out what it is. Maybe don't do that though. In fact, definitely don't do that. You'll burn your house down and or get cancer and sue me. Use other identification means instead, such as the acrylic edge cut test. This butane torch also has a hot knife attachment, but I don't really use it. All right, see ya.